Hi, and welcome to Finding Your Way Through Therapy, a proud member of the Sightcraft Network. The goal of this podcast is to demystify therapy, what can happen in therapy, and the wide array of conversations you can have in and about therapy. Through personal experiences, guests will talk about therapy, their experiences with it, and how psychology and therapy are present in many places in their lives, with lots of authenticity and a touch of humor. Here is your host, Steve Bisson.
Alors, bienvenue à l'année 2025, la saison numéro 12. Welcome to the year 2025 and season 12 of Finding Your Way. Yes, I'm already kind of telling you what I'm going to talk about today, which is a rebranding. So I know you can see it if you're on YouTube. You see I'm fading out the name, but it will now become Finding Your Way. How long? Not so long, actually, because I'm actually working on rebranding my whole podcast. There's a few reasons for that, and I want to make sure I share them with you because I don't want you to think, well, he's doing this just to X, Y, Z reasons. No, I'm doing it for a specific reason. So the first thing I want to say is this. I've been thinking about a rebranding for about 3 to 6 months now. Why do I want to rebrand? Part of it is because I want to get back to what I actually wanted to do. So I wanted people to know about how to find their way through therapy. And I thought I did that really well for 185 episodes, give or take. Now we're going into season 12. And one of the things I've been thinking about is finding ways to make my work a little more concrete. And then what I mean by that is this: while I do like a lot of the subjects we talked about, really, I think you figured out so far as my audience that I like first responder stuff. I really like talking about that. I like to talk about trauma. And I do like about talking about grief. I also like to talk about how to coach people, and particularly people who are, looking, more executive positions. So these are all the things that I've been very excited about when I think about all the podcasts that I've done. So instead of me trying to always keep it as general as I can, which probably is going to be, always going to be tough for me to get a audience when you keep it so general, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start making it a little more specific. And so I talked about the subjects that I want to talk about. I'm not 100% sure I'm going to do that, but I might go in order. And sometimes I'll repeat a couple of times. And they're not all going to be interviews. Why? Because I think that I need to talk more about what I do in regards to these things, because there's a lot of that missing from the podcast. So am I criticizing myself? I guess I am. But I'm also wanting my audience to kind of figure out where I'm coming from and what I enjoy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw you to a commercial. I'm going to come back on the other side. So please listen to this very important message from free.ai. GetFree.ai. Yes, you've heard me talk about it previously in other episodes, but I'm going to talk about it again because GetFree.ai is just a great service. Imagine being able to pay attention to your clients all the time, instead of writing notes and making sure that the note's going to sound good and how are you going to write that note and things like that. GetFree.ai liberates you from making sure that you're writing what the client is saying, because it is keeping track of what you're saying and will create, after the end of every session, a progress note. But it goes above and beyond that. Not only does it create a progress note, it also gives you suggestions for goals, gives you even a mental status if you've asked questions around that, as well as being able to write a letter for your client to know what you talked about. So that's the great thing. It saves me time, it saves me a lot of aggravation, and it just speeds up the progress note process so well. And for $99 a month, I know that that's nothing. That's worth my time. That's worth my money. The best part of it too is that if you want to go and put in the code Steve50 when you get the service, at the checkout code is Steve50, you get $50 off your first month. And if you get a whole year, you save a whole 10% for the whole year. So again, Steve50 at checkout for getfree.ai will give you $50 off for the first month. And like I said, get a full year, get 10% off. Get freed from writing notes, get freed from always scribbling while you're talking to a client, and just paying attention to your client so they win out, you win out, everybody wins. And I think that this is the greatest thing. And if you're up to a point where you got to change the treatment plan, well, the goals are generated for you. So getfree.ai, code Steve50 to save $50 on your first month. So welcome back. And yes, we're going to be calling it Finding Your Way for a short while. We're going to change to another name. I have a great name in mind. I'm not sharing it right away because there's going to be some kinks to work out. But ultimately, I'm going to be changing the name to something else, which will reflect a little more about what I want to talk about. And also kind of like hopefully get people to look at what I do in a different way. Why do I also want to do this is because I really think that the highest, we talked about it in the last season, I've had a few good hits on different things that may not be related to those subjects. But when I do those episodes that I enjoy, I feel I get more referrals. So that's interesting, right? So I get more downloads on certain things, but I get more referrals by talking about stuff that, I really work on: trauma, grief, first responder stuff, and even the coaching part. So that's part of what I want to do. And I want to really make my brand straight to the point therapy, my therapy on brand with the podcast. Also linked to Gambit Counseling, which is my joint venture with my business partner, Bill Dwinells. So I'm just trying to make everything like in order. So, I want to make sure that everyone enjoys it, but I also want to make sure that I enjoy it because sometimes, while there's a lot of great guests I've had, I'm just doing it just to do it. And if I don't have anyone, I'm just going to chit chat. I'm going to be doing my own stuff. One of the other ideas that I have is I really want you listeners to come back. So, if you're on YouTube, like this channel and even like this video and subscribe, as well as anyone who's on any of the other major podcast platforms. But what I'd like to do is release bonus episodes. Sometimes I go long with some of the guests, and it's not that I don't want to go long still, but I want to make it a little more concise so people can really enjoy it. Again, looking at how things go, people like shorter podcasts. I'm going to go with that. Do they like short, or they like, 30 to 45-minute range? Yeah, roughly. And if I have more things to talk about, we're going to create bonus episodes. Where those bonus episodes are going to go, I don't know yet, but I will encourage you to keep on listening because this is a progress. One of the things I can tell you for sure is by the 200 episode, which will probably be recorded for April, I will have the full rebrand done. The other part that is probably boring to you, so you see this background pretty much the same for the last 3.5 years. I'm going to be changing. I have a space I have now rented. I'm really thinking about doing everything from there. I just have to work out a few kinks. So you may see some interviews from there and some interviews from here right now, but eventually it's just going to be coming from that new studio that I'm currently working on. And I will keep some of my regulars, right? So what I mean by that is this. Will the mental men go away? Well, no, because they're the mental men. One of them being my mentor and other people that I truly respect and really have talked to for a long time in my career. I want them to come back, talk about stuff. Are we going to talk about trauma, grief? Are we going to talk about mentorship? Are we going to talk about coaching? I don't know yet. We'll figure it out, but that's how that group goes. We sometimes look at what's going on in the world right now when we talk about that, but we also talk about our experiences. So that won't change. Would I love to have someone like Stephanie Simpson back? Of course. If you listen to that episode, we were talking about going for a meeting in New York and doing something there. And this is not out of the realm of possibility. We're still working on it. So, and that's the stuff that I'd like to do. I also invite you, the listeners, to tell me what you want to hear. So one of the things that I don't, sometimes again, I tell you, I get feedback, but I'm really talking to, like if you saw right here, it's going to be the same in my new studio. I'm looking at a screen with a camera on top. There's no one giving me feedback. And then when I get the feedbacks, it's usually positive. But the most positive feedback have been about the first responder meetings, not meetings, but the first responder podcasts. There's been also great feedback on the trauma and the grief. When we talked about coaching, I know Stephanie Simpson's episodes really just stay on top most of it. So I really want to do that. I also want to do it for me, obviously, because hey, it's my podcast. I do whatever I want. But again, listeners, give me your feedback. Tell me what you think. I have a couple of names in mind. It will represent a little bit more of what I do. And hopefully that will bring people in. And that's the stuff that I'm hoping to do. As I get involved with the Mindful Guardians, which has been something that I'm near and dear to my heart. I'm working with a bunch of therapists in Massachusetts, and we're trying to create a nice kind of like networking for all therapists who work with first responders. I have a few friends, we talk about grief and trauma regularly, and I get a lot of referrals for that. So really want to keep everything in line with everything I do. And yeah, humor is going to be still part of it, although I'm kind of not funny tonight. Listen to this some other time, maybe you'll find it funny, who knows? But ultimately, that's the goal right now. And I wanted to share it with you. Resilience is key, and I want to see it in action. And, I want people to be able to talk about all those things and being able to move forward in their lives with, whether it's first responders, whether it's supporting other people who are having trauma or issues with grief. So, anyway, if you are smart enough, I'm dropping a few hints of possible names for the future for the podcast when we relaunch in April 2025. It's very exciting to me. Consulting with a bunch of people. I want to consult with you, my audience. Please write back. And speaking of which, this for episode 186, this was actually something I wanted to release in December. And I'm like, no, this is a lot more important to start thinking about the rebranding. So on Finding Your Way, we're going to have Dave Roberts, who, talks about grief and trauma. And I'm looking forward to having that conversation with him. And I hope you join me then.
Please like, subscribe, and follow this podcast on your favorite platform. A glowing review is always helpful. And as a reminder, this podcast is for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only. If you're struggling with a mental health or substance abuse issue, please reach out to a professional counselor for consultation. If you are in a mental health crisis, call 988 for assistance. This number is available in the United States and Canada.